Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk a little bit about another one of the yamas, or the things to avoid on the spiritual path. As I said before, the yamas and the niyamas, the things to avoid, and the niyamas, the things to practice consciously, make up the 10 commandments of yoga. And they are attitudes and ways of thinking and being that we need to keep referring to throughout our spiritual lives. They're very, very important. A friend of ours takes one of the yamas or niyamas and focuses on it for a year. And she's been doing this for over 20 years. So maybe a lot longer than that, decades. So these are very important concepts. And today I'll just touch briefly on the yama of non-violence. This is something that Gandhi made popular, brought into the culture's awareness. Ahimsa. It's a very, very important concept. And the way that it applies to us in our daily lives is very subtle. Most of us are not going out there as fighters, and we're not trying to be soldiers necessarily, except soldiers of the light. And what it means for us is to always have a very centered calmness within ourselves. We need to consciously practice peacefulness. So, in little ways, for example, this morning I found a spider in my kitchen, and I am not terribly squeamish about spiders in particular, so it was a daddy long legs, and I just carefully picked him up and took him outside because I didn't want to kill him. But sometimes there are, too many bugs or things that are harmful to human life, and we do need to get rid of them. Cockroaches, for example, if they get to be too much, we need to just get rid of them because they can be harmful. But we can have our attitude still be peaceful. We can still try not to feel anger or disgust or hatred. I remember a time in India. We had not been there very long. We just had one group house. We got to, I think, probably 9 group houses in a small block area at our height of being in Gurgaon. But we just had one house still. And as it happened on this particular day, Dharmadas was away on tour. Our general manager was not there that day. And so by default, I was sort of the only one in authority, which in a Indian culture, having not lived there very long, I was not completely sure of myself in this particular instance, which was that suddenly, I think I was in the kitchen of the house, and someone came to me and said, all these people are in the house, and they're looking for this one lady who had just moved in. Now, the backstory of this lady was that she had supported her family, her husband in particular, had never worked. She had been the sole breadwinner for 20 years probably. She had always paid the rent on the house that they lived in. But she had finally come to the point where she couldn't take the abuse anymore. She couldn't take having to be the sole person keeping the energy going for the family, and she left her husband and she moved into the ashram with the approval of Swami and the ministers and Ananda, and she's still part of Ananda all these years later. Wonderful, energetic, fine person, but she was in a situation that was not good, and she finally had the courage to leave that situation. However, the people who were used to getting the rent from her were outraged. And so a dozen people, or maybe more, I don't remember. In my memory, it was legions of people, but it could have been 10, I don't know. But they came to our house knowing, they found out where she lived. They came to our house, they were inside the house, and they were ready to go upstairs and storm her bedroom and, get this woman to give them the rent money for her husband's house that she was not even living in anymore. And so me, knowing the situation, knowing that she was in the right and feeling that she needed to be protected, what I did was I greeted all these people in a kind and friendly way, and then I said, "Follow me." And they all assumed I was taking them to her, when in fact I took all of them all the way down the stairs and out into the courtyard. And when they were all out in the courtyard, they were aghast. "Wait a minute, I thought you were taking us to her." And they started yelling and demanding to see her and demanding that we give them the rent money and all sorts of other crazy things. And I had to stand up to them. It was a very unusual circumstance, and I found myself, I'm relatively petite. These people were taller than I was. They were older than I was, and they were very angry. But I refused to let them back into the house, and I had to be very stern, which is not my nature. I had to be very definite about what we would and would not do, and I had to ask that they leave, and I had to do that repeatedly until I basically wore them out, which meant that we all had to stand there in the hot sun for much longer than we wanted to, until they were finally satisfied that I was not going to let them back into the house or give them access to this person or give them any money. So I use that as an example of sometimes we have to stand up for what we think is right, and sometimes we have to channel more authority or more sternness than we would prefer, but we can never allow ourselves to give in to the indulgence of being angry. Once we've done that, we've lost our inner peace. That is a very hard lesson. And I remember just in the aftermath of being with those people in the courtyard, being a little bit shaky in my nervous system because it had been such an effort to channel enough authority to rebuff all those people. And it's not easy, but God asks us to do that sometimes, to stand up for what is right. But we don't need to be violent, and we don't need to be angry. Sometimes soldiers have to fight, but that doesn't mean they have to give in to the hatred. They have to be centered in Dharma, centered in what is true, centered in what is right. Sometimes violence is perpetrated on us. Sometimes we are the victim of anger or hatred. How do we respond to that? There's a beautiful saying in India, be like the jasmine, that even if it's crushed, it gives off a sweet fragrance. So in ourselves, we need to learn the very interesting and challenge of seeing everything as coming from God, seeing everything that happens to us as our own karma coming back in ways that we didn't expect or don't appreciate. I remember a very, very difficult test that I went through some years ago, and it threw me off center. It drove me to the brink of despair. I was hurt on so many levels, and yet I had to keep reminding myself, this is no one's fault except my own. This has come to me through my own karma. There's no one to blame except myself. I don't know what I did in the past. All I know is I'm really sorry, and I'm very grateful to be paying off this karmic debt. And I tried to be humorous about it in my mind, and I kept thinking, well, the karmic visa bill that arrived unexpectedly, you think through the month, you're buying this, you're buying that, and you're thinking, oh, that's not so much, that's only $10, that's only $15, that's only $50, it's all good, it's not too much, it's not too bad. And then you get hit with a bill, and it's $300, and you think, oh no, I didn't do that, I don't deserve this bill, I didn't spend this much money. And then you think back, or you look on the bill and it goes $10, $15, $50 here, there, the other thing, all adds up to $300. And then you realize, okay, I did it. No one to blame but me. And so you're paying off that karmic visa bill. You don't remember what you did. You don't feel like it was that bad in the moment, but you're having to pay for it. And accept that everything comes as it should. God is teaching us something. We don't know why we deserve these things, but it's all for our own good. Karma is not to be feared. Karma is to be grateful for, because karma is teaching us what causes pain and what causes the absence of pain. And we learn to steer our lives so that we're not in suffering. Karma is like putting our hand on a hot stove and it burns us, and then we know not to put our hand on a hot stove. Do something else. That's all karma is. But no matter what happens in our lives, whether we have to stand up for what we think is right in some instance, or if we have to accept the karma that's coming to us, the main thing is to stand calmly, to stand in peace before whatever trial it is. Constantly turning to God, constantly asking God, what should I do? What should I say? What do I need to be and grow into to alleviate the suffering and to live in joy? God bless you.